What is happening, everyone? Welcome back to the show. I'm Timmy Foodie. Today we're going to do a nice little leftovers dish from the brisket that we cooked the other day. So what I'm going to do first, I want to make this into like a ragu kind of pasta sauce kind of thing. So what we're going to do is some of our brisket that we've got left over. We don't need to do much with that just at the minute. First thing we want to do is get our tomato sauce ready. So I'm going to use 2 tins of plum tomatoes, just peeled whole tomatoes. A nice Italian brand is best. They're the best tomatoes. So we're just going to have some salt and pepper, 2 tins of tomatoes, and then we're going to get some balsamic vinegar, if I can find it. This is a super simple dish. Shouldn't be too complicated. So first off, get a pan, preferably a deepish pan is best because it stops the tomato juices from like splashing everywhere quite as much. It just kind of keeps it in the tin. To get the excess kind of tomato liquid out of there, you can just run a tiny bit of water in it and just swizzle it around a touch and then just pour it in. Excuse me, and that gets most of the tomato out. And this kind of base, so you'll notice this is the same sort of base that we did for our barbecue sauce that I made. So this is just a really good way to make a nice base for any kind of stew or, I don't know, bolognese, pasta sauce, even like a tomato ketchup. This is a really good base to start off with, and then once you've made this sauce you can develop it into whatever you want. So first off, 2 tins of tomatoes, pinch of salt. I'm using Maldon salt, so that's about a teaspoon of salt. We're going to do a few grinds of pepper, and I haven't even got the heat on yet. You can kind of turn it on whenever you want, so just get that on a medium heat. Big, I don't know, probably a teaspoon of freshly ground pepper, balsamic vinegar. I'm just going to put a nice, probably a tablespoon's worth in there. This isn't the best balsamic vinegar, but it's okay. I've got this kind of fig glaze, which is kind of fig and balsamic reduced down into this kind of thick, sweet, vinegary, it's like sweet and sour liquid. So we're going to put about a teaspoon of that in there as well. Then I want to just put a bit of olive oil. So I'm just going to do a little drizzle of olive oil. Again, probably about a teaspoon, 2 teaspoons. I'm just going to do whatever's left in there. And that's pretty much it, really. We might pop in a little bit of sugar. So this is just unrefined cane sugar sort of thing. So it's just like it's not like pure white. You don't really want to be using sugar that's been refined too much. So this is nice and unrefined organic sugar, and about a tablespoon of sugar should be fine. You could use coconut sugar if you wanted to, or panela, which is evaporated cane juice. That's also really nice. And then so the heat's on with that. We're just going to get a spoon, just stir that all in, mix it up well. And then you can kind of use your spoon to just kind of, as you can see what I'm doing, I'm just sort of smushing the tomatoes against the edge of the pan and just cutting through it with the spoon, just to sort of mash them up a bit. But as it heats up, it will naturally get a bit easier to just all smash up, and it will all eventually all just kind of disintegrate down. But you can kind of help it on its way just by kind of smushing it a little bit. You could use a masher for this as well if you wanted to, but I'm just finding a spoon or even a fork or something is good. So whatever you've got is fine. So that's looking pretty good. So that's nicely done. We'll come and smash that up a bit more in a bit once it's warmed through. So we're just going to bring that up to the boil and then turn it right down to a really gentle simmer and cook that for, I don't know, about an hour or so. We just want it to cook right down and thicken and concentrate all those flavours, and then we're going to use that in our ragu sauce for when we combine it with the beef brisket and a few other bits and bobs that we're going to do. But what this does is, I mean, you could do the brisket stuff and fry all the bits off that we're going to do and then add these tomatoes in and cook it down, but it's going to be probably cooking for too long, and you don't really need to do that. This is actually probably a quicker way of doing it and actually getting a much better end result in less time. And also, this is the sort of thing that you can make up a big batch of this at the weekend and use like maybe 6 tins of tomato and just increase the quantities of the balsamic vinegar, the salt, the pepper and the sugar, and cook this right down into a nice thick sauce. Pop it in the fridge or even the freezer, portion it out if you do freeze it, so you can just take out a bit at a time, but if not, it'll keep in the fridge for the week easily, like 4 or 5 days, no problem. So and then what you can do is you can then take that each day and turn that into something different. So use it for a bolognese one day, a nice like ragu pasta sauce that we're going to do today. You can do a nice vegetarian mixed vegetable kind of pasta thing with this tomato sauce as the base. You can do some nice seafood, some like crab meat or a prawn linguine thing. It's entirely up to you. It's such a versatile sauce. Or you can do what we did the other day, which was turn it into a barbecue sauce, which also worked really well. So yeah, get this prepared, and then we'll be on to the next stage. So if you want to cook up a big batch of this and put it to one side and use it through the week, then you just jump, and you've already got this done, jump to the next step, which we'll get to now, and then yeah, you'll make an awesome delicious ragu pasta sauce. And if you've made my brisket, then this is a perfect follow-up to that recipe. So get in there and give it a go. I'm just going to use some whatever pasta I've got. I think I've got some spaghetti in the cupboard, so that's what I'm going to use today. It's the sort of pasta doesn't matter, like whatever you prefer, whether it's a tagliatelle, a spaghetti, a fusilli, whatever it is. I'm not a big fan of penne personally. I think it's a bit boring, but if you're into that, then go for it. So there we go. So you can kind of see it's just gently bubbling away, really, really gentle. So I'm just going to leave that on. It's on super low, so this is on a 2 on my induction hob, but I can probably eventually turn that down to a 1. But the 2 is good at the moment. You just want it to just be bubbling really gently and not sticking. Enough so you're seeing some steam coming off it, because that's the liquid evaporating from it, which will help reduce it and then thicken and concentrate the flavour. So once that's reduced by at least half from the quantity that it's at currently, then you know that's going to have more flavour and stuff in it, and you can cook it down for as long as you want and as thick as you want, really. So we'll come back to this in about an hour, and I'll show you the sort of thickness that we want, and then we'll get on to the next step. So this is the sauce. This has been on for around it's been about an hour or so, and then as you can see, it's super kind of thick and kind of gloopy, and there's some different, I've kind of smushed up the tomato a bit more, but there's still some different size texture bits, which I actually quite like. So you can see it's super thick. So I've just turned that off now, and that can just go to one side and just chill out for a bit. We're going to get a pan to cook this in. Now, a deeper pan's probably just as good, but I'm going to use this lower one just so it's a bit better of an angle and it's easier for you to see what's going on. But a nice big pan like this is generally pretty good. I mean, can you see the sort of depth that it is? It's about 3 inches deep, really thick base. Good. This is a great pan. So sauce is cooked down. That's about an hour, so that's perfect. That can just sit to one side. It can cool down a bit. It's all good. And then we're going to keep this super simple. So I've got some butternut squash here, or butternut pumpkin, whatever you want to call it. I don't want to use all of this. I'm going to probably halve it. I left it whole like this. I mean, I just bought a half, but I left it like this so you can see how I prepare it, because this is a bit of a tricky one, because it's quite a firm, difficult thing to cut. So I'll just show you how I do that. Then I've just got 1 carrot, and then this is just some onion that I had left over from some recipes I did the other day that I just popped in the fridge. And these will be absolutely fine for what we want. We don't need a huge amount. I'm going to get a clove of garlic. That'll do, just a little go like that. That's probably enough. And that's basically it. The brisket's still in the fridge, but we'll grab that out and rip a chunk of that off in a sec. So now this, because it's quite a thick, chunky bit, we need quite a sturdy knife to cut through it. But it also does need to be sharp. I might just use my global knife, because these guys, they're a bit more sturdy as a knife. and it works. It's sharp enough. I mean, I normally hold a pretty good edge on it. If you want a little bit more, then you can just use one of these. This is a ceramic steel, and just do a few passes over that. I tend to do all my sharpening on sharpening stones, and then I'll use this thing so you can actually see what I was doing. I was doing that sort of thing, yeah. I do have a leather strop as well for bringing an extra edge into it, but that's probably good for this. So what we're going to do, I'll probably reserve this half and use this bit. So just turn it face down. I mean, it's reasonably sturdy, and just get it coming into a bit. Hold your hand on this side of the knife and just really carefully just bring that down through, and that's like the trickiest part of the cutting done. I'm going to put this in the fridge and reserve that. And there's a little thing I do when I roast this and make a little dip, which I might do with this. It's not going to give me that much, but it's a good little tip to do. So I'll just pop that in the fridge. Then I'm probably going to just cut this end off. Again, get it started, hand on this end of the knife, and just down through really gently. You do still need a sharp knife for this, but a slightly sturdier edge is good. Now, some people would cut this down with the knife and do that, but if you've got a good peeler, hold it steady, and you can just, you know, pull your peeler across and peel the skin off. This skin you can actually roast and then eat. You can, like if you're doing roast veggies, you'd actually leave this skin on, and it's actually quite nutritious. So, but I don't really want that in this dish, so I'm just gonna do this. It's a much safer way of doing this than using a knife. So if your knife skills aren't as good, then just do it this way. Plus you don't lose quite as much of the squash or the pumpkin, whatever you want to call it. Some people call it butternut squash, some people call it butternut pumpkin. So there's our nice chunk there. So what I'm going to do is, if you want to mark this out so you know how thick your chunks are going to be and if you're going to get enough cuts out of it, then you can do. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bits there, about 1 centimetre and a bit in thickness. And again, we'll cut as we did before. We'll get it started so it's nice and steady. Hold our hand on this part here to sturdy it, and just cut down through like that. And there's one chunk. We'll do the same here. It's 2 chunks, 3 and 4. There we go, perfect. So there's our little bits, so you can see. And then I want, probably going to do that in half. Again, same principle, and then we can just cut them into about 1.5 centimetre kind of cubes. And then if you don't want to do the actual brisket part of this, if you're a veggie, then you could just keep going with other vegetables like you know, mushrooms, courgettes, or zucchinis, if that's what you like to call them, and I don't know, maybe parsnips, some other good root veggies, and just mix out the sort of veggies you want in there, and do exactly what I'm doing, just minus the brisket, and you'll get a really nice kind of vegetable kind of ragu sauce thing, which is just as delicious if you're not into your meat. And this would all be vegan as well, because I haven't really used any butter or anything like that. So yeah, so suitable for the vegans out there as well. So you can see that's the kind of size chunk we're talking about here, yeah. So pretty good. Because I don't want them too small because they'll just disintegrate. We still want a little bit in there, but we do kind of want a few maybe a little bit smaller, because disintegrating in there would be quite nice. And there's the odd like little corner chunk or something that's a bit smaller, but generally speaking they're about the same size with the odd smaller bit. So we'll get some with a nice bit of texture to them still, and some which will just mush apart. So that's awesome. That can just go to one side. And remember my little tip, always keep a little bowl that you can keep the offcuts in, because it just saves on kitchen mess. I'm going to get out my proper knife. Oh, it's so sharp, oh my god. And then this, I don't really want to dice it, I want a bit of chunkiness in here, so I'm going to just halve it down that way, and then turn it across, and then just cut it however you want, just kind of like that. It's not too important how you cut this, so just kind of however you want to do it really. just watch what you're doing. If you've got a sharp knife, just pay attention. So if I do stop talking, it's because I'm concentrating. I'm going to leave this garlic clove whole because I'm going to smush all this in the pan at the end. So just peel it, leave it whole like that, perfect. And then with the carrot, let's just move that to one side. I'm just going to top and tail that. And then what I like to do is cut it in half first, and then we're going to cut it lengthways, so hold it either side. Get the knife, put it in, just so it kind of grips into the veg, and then put your fingers either side to steady it, and then cut through really gently like that, and there's your two halves. This one, because it's a bit more sturdy going upright, we can do the same, but get it started, and then hold the two sides, and then cut through like that, and then there's your two bits. This will probably cut down the middle like this again, and then we can just do some nice simple cuts and chunks like this. And again, what I want is a few bigger bits, so we'll do this half as the bigger chunks, and then I want some smaller bits as well. So I'm actually gonna, normally you could just, these would be about the right size to just go across like this, but I want a few smaller bits in there for some different size textures and stuff. So I'm going to do those in half like that, and then I'm just going to do quite small chunks and just cut that through. And again, don't go too crazy with the speed if you're not too certain with the knife, like I don't want you to cut yourself. And there we go, perfect. So there's onions, garlic, carrots, squash, and that's going to be our base for this kind of sauce. We'll get the brisket out in a sec, but we're not at that stage yet. So we're going to get the pan on and then get that warmed up and then start cooking this stuff off. Right, so pan on, let it heat up, then I've put the oil in, and then we're just going to drop in our clove of garlic, and that can just sizzle away really gently. Now what we want to do is actually get this just to impart some of its garlicky flavour into the oil, and that will just, I don't know if you can hear, it's really gently sizzling. And then we want this just to take on a bit of colour on all sides, so we're just going to stay with this for a couple of minutes and just let that take on some colour. So that's good now, so you can kind of see, I don't know if you can kind of see that, I'll turn it around. It's just taken on a little bit of colour, and that's what we want. And now I'm going to pop in the onion. Oh, watch out, it's going to splash. And I'm going to put the carrots in with it at the same time, because that's probably a tiny bit hot, and turn it down to a medium heat. That can do its thing really nicely. Give that a stir around. Then we're going to get a pinch of salt all over everything like that. A few grinds of pepper. Perfect. And give that a little stir around. So I've turned the heat down to a medium heat now as well, remember. And that's about perfect now. So you can hear that sort of sizzle is what we want. I got the Big Bash playing on in the background, so if I whoop or holler, then something incredible has happened. So that's great. That can just keep ticking along, cooking off gently like that. We're going to cook this for about 5 minutes like this, and just keep moving it around like this, really gently. Don't let anything stick onto one side too much, because we're just sweating this down. We really don't want it to take on too much colour. We're just literally warming the veggies through, and then the onions will start to go translucent, and then they'll start to cook down and then start to take on like an overall light kind of really light off-white brown colour sort of, excuse me, kind of thing. So that's great. That can just do its thing. So we'll be back in about 5 minutes, and we'll pop the pumpkin in. Right, we're back. That's had about 5 minutes, and this is cooking down really nicely. The onions have started to get a little bit translucent, and the carrots have just cooked off a little bit. A little bit of garlic's gone all kind of golden and squishy. That can just keep sitting there. We'll have to hunt that down at the end and smush it in. So don't forget to do that. Or someone will get a big chunk of garlic in their mouthful. But it's not going to be that bad because it goes all soft and caramelised and sweet and delicious, so it's actually not too bad. So, but this is just imparting a real subtle garlic flavour. And then this way you don't get those little burnt, little diced bits of garlic and stuff, because it's very hard to not, when you finely dice garlic and cook it in there, it's very hard for it to not burn. So it's a much better way to do it. So that's looking really good. That's had about 5 minutes. So now what we're going to do is pop in our chunks of butternut squash. Chuck them all over the kitchen if you can. I'm going to chuck that in. And now what I'm going to do, as I was saying the other day, I like to season per ingredient, so I know kind of how much salt is going in this. So a little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper, and then let's just stir all that through. You might need to turn the heat up a notch now, just to get, because the temperature will drop when you put something cold in there. So we're just going to turn that up a touch. So I've just gone up 1 on there, which is, I can barely see what I'm doing. I've got seasoning all over that. There we go. And we're going to cook this down for, this is probably going to be about 10 or 15 minutes, because I want these to soften quite a bit before we go to our next step. Because of the size of the chunks, it's going to take a little bit of time. So you need to keep moving it around, but when they start to soften, just be a bit gentle with it. I don't mind if a few of the bits break up and mush in, that's going to be fine, but we do want to keep some of the chunkiness in there. So you just you see how I'm doing it, just really gently, just move things around, and then let it sit for a few minutes, move it around a bit more, but you don't want to let them sit and not do anything with them, because you might find the bits of onion and carrots, because they're cooked down a bit more, they might start to stick, which you don't really want. So that's great. So let's just keep doing that, moving it around for about 10 minutes, and then we'll come back. While we're doing that, get your brisket out of the fridge, pull some chunks off it, and you're going to end up with a plate full of brisket like this, with just some nice big chunks. That's about right. It's probably enough for like 3 or 4 people, and then you can just leave them as chunks for the minute. Once that warms up a bit from being in the fridge, it'll be easier to pull apart, and we'll just flake it into this dish when it comes to it, and just leave a few big chunks and small chunks. Eventually it's all going to just kind of disintegrate it all in together anyway. So yeah, get that prepared while we're cooking this bit down, and then we'll get on to the next step in about 10 minutes. Okay, so we're back. It's been about 10 minutes. You can see this has all started to like cook down. You probably can't quite see that, but it's the edges of the pumpkin have kind of softened a bit, and they've taken on a bit of colour in places. They're getting a little bit squidgy. It does cook quite quick, pumpkin, so but like I said, I don't mind if a lot of this just mushes into this sauce. So that's good. It's still got a bit of firmness to it. The smaller bits are a bit soft, and some of the edges are a bit soft, but that's perfect. So that's really great. And now what I probably do here is some sort of awesome herbiness. I've got this kind of bouquet garni mix here, which I've put some sage into as well the other day. So I'm gonna just pop a bit of dried sage in that, because I think that's gonna work really well, and then just get a little pinch of this bouquet garni thing, which is just a mix of, I should probably know this, but it's thyme, parsley, Bailey's, marjoram, which is a nice little mixture. So a little bit of that, that's good. That's all we really need there. Let me just shut this cupboard door before I walk into it and clothesline myself. Yeah, that smells beautiful. Sage is really great with pumpkin and beef and all that sort of stuff, so it's quite a good flavour to add into this. We're going to be adding basil in right at the end, like fresh basil, but for the moment, just a little pinch, no more than like just 2 pinches of what I put in. Then if you saw what I put in, it's not a huge amount, it's just enough to give it a nice base flavour. And that's perfect. So as you can kind of see, it's kind of all cooked down nicely, softened a bit. And then we're going to get our beef brisket and just take chunks, and as you can see what I'm doing, I'm just pulling it apart. I might turn it down just a touch because it's getting a bit hot, That was on like a 4, I'm now down to a 2. And just kind of flake this and rip it and drop it in different sized chunks. Don't go too small with the bits. I mean, it probably is all just going to disintegrate into strands, but just chunks like this is really good. And that's going in there very nicely. And like I said, the quantity, it depends how many people you're cooking this for, but this will last for a few days in the fridge, so you can, you know, it's great for meals during the week, or you could use this mixture and turn it into a lasagna or something, which maybe we'll do that over the weekends. So I'm probably not gonna be able to eat a huge amount of this myself. And there we go, that's perfect. So that's all just in there like that. Let's just wash the hands very quickly. So we're just mixing all that around. It's smelling pretty awesome. And don't worry about breaking these chunks up. Just be really gentle now that you're tossing this round, just so everything doesn't just break up too much. We've lost a bit of heat now, so I'm going to bring that back up again now all the brisket's in. So can you see that? That's looking really good. So that's just this mixture of everything all nicely tossed together. Now, once the heat comes back into that, I think I'm going to nick a bit of wine. Now, this isn't my wine, so don't tell my friend, the unicorn, and you have to listen to Harmonic Whiskey Tales if you want to know who that is. So this is her wine, but I'm sure she's not going to mind for something this delicious. And then we're going to just keep stirring that round. Let some heat come back into. I might just turn it up a little bit more and get it really sizzling before we add this wine. And this is just a Riesling white wine. It doesn't really matter what you use. If you've got something in the fridge, if it's not wine, then God, you could put sparkling white wine, bit of red wine, a splash of whiskey, just a little bit of booze in there, just to, it just helps release some flavors and add a little layer of kind of flavour to it that you wouldn't normally get. So yeah, and if you don't want to use wine or booze at all, I mean, you can use beer if you wanted to, that might be quite nice. But if you don't want to use any of that, then just a splash of stock at this stage if you wanted to. That's just doing its thing. So can you hear that starting to pick up the heat, and it's starting to sizzle a bit? This is on about a 6, so that's like a medium to high heat, not fully high, because we don't want it to like burn horribly. You might start to find a few bits stick to the bottom of the pan, but that's okay. We don't want it to burn, but a little bit of sticking's okay. This is gonna be epic. Fuck me, God. And the reason I want some heat into this is when I put the wine in, I want it to sort of bubble and sizzle straight away and reduce down quite quickly. So that's, yeah, it's probably getting hot enough. I'm going to put about a glass of wine in there. Right, can you hear that sizzle? That's what we want. So that was about a glass of wine. Well, maybe about, give or take. And what I've got left in there, I mean, I probably should have just finished it really, but we'll use that for something else. So that's now going to just reduce down, give it a little stir, just to pull off any little bits of, it will just release all the stuff if anything did start to stick to the bottom of the pan. That's called deglazing it. Now, if you don't want to get drunk, don't breathe in the fumes like I just did, because that will get you a bit tipsy. So that's, so you can see there, that's kind of, I don't know if you can really see. I need to get a camera that's closer in on this stuff, which we will get to, but it's a work in progress. I've got to save up enough money to buy more cameras. So tell your friends, hit subscribe, like, share, and let's get this channel going so that I can buy more cameras, because I'm a bit of a gadget freak. So what I should probably do is a video of all the fucking gadgets I've got that's helping me to film all this. So it might be quite interesting for you to see the setup I've got, because it's not like super advanced. I think I'd like a better lens, because when I zoom in it doesn't seem so sharp, so I need to look at that. Anyway, it's back to this. This is kind of all reduced You'll know if it's burnt off the alcohol, because if you have a smell and it's not like super pungently alcohol-y, you'll know it's kind of like getting there. So if I smell now, it's kind of lost that kind of alcohol pungency to it. Is that even a word? Who knows? So that's awesome. So that's gone all thick and reduced. All that wine's pretty much evaporated off. So we know that's at a good stage. So now we get our tomato sauce. And I'm not going to use all of this, I don't think I need to, but we'll see. So we're just going to start spooning that in to the pan. And we don't want this to be overly tomatoey, but so let's put about half of that quantity. Put that to one side. And now I'm going to turn that down to a 2 again, because that's had enough heat into it. You can kind of see the beef's all mushed apart now. It will just naturally happen, so there's not much you can do about that. We're just going to stir that and just toss that all over. And then I want that to just cook a bit longer, because I want the pumpkin to cook down a bit and start mushing through, and it will add like a really nice layer of kind of sweetness to it. But we don't want all of that to reduce down. So as you can see, it's quite thick, but we do want it to be quite thick. Because I've done all the work with the tomato sauce, it's already pretty good. I mean, you could give that a few more minutes once the pumpkin's cooked and then serve it, but this is going to need a little bit longer. So what I'm going to do, which should help bring a bit of moisture out, is put a lid on, if we can find the lid. So you will need a pan that can have a lid on it. And I'm just going to leave that on for a bit, and then let's see what the liquid is saying. If I need it to be a bit looser, I might just add in a splash of stock or something. If you've got some of that chicken stock that we made the other day left over, pop a bit of that in. If not, just some veggie stock or a stock cube, hot water, and then, but we don't need a huge amount of it, so just to loosen things up. You could, to be honest, just put a splash of water in there, because there's so much flavour in there that even water, I mean, it's not going to dilute that flavour too much. So, but let's see how that's doing. So that's on a 2, super low. Let's let that bubble away and then see what kind of how liquid it is, and then we'll come back to it. So let's give that about 5 minutes, and then we'll come and check up on it. Okay, so we're back. I think having a look at this, it does need a little splash of liquid in it, I think, just to loosen things up, just a touch. So I'm just going to add some water. So as you can see, just a little glass, just a little drizzle. All I want this to do is just to loosen everything up ever so slightly. So I mean, that's probably like a tablespoon of water, like if that. And you can just see it just loosens things off just ever so slightly, which is great. I mean, it's all going to probably thicken up again in a minute anyway. And once we do our little final stage, it's going to go real nice and thick and unctuous. But I want it to have enough liquid in it to finish cooking off that pumpkin. And obviously the carrots and, you know, everything needs to finish cooking. So that can just still keep ticking away on a low heat. I might notch it up 1. Give it a few more minutes. So I think in total, from when we put the brisket in and then we put the sauce in, I reckon it needs about 15 to 20 minutes from that point. So it's actually, if you've got the tomato sauce, oh, what a shot that was. That was Glenn Maxwell doing his genius thing. Where was I? So if you've got your tomato sauce pre-made, that you can do it at the weekend and you've got a big batch of it, and you've made your brisket at the weekend, let's say, so you've got that for recipes during the week, it's actually a pretty quick recipe, because we've got this concentrated tomato sauce flavour there already. You've got this brilliant brisket, so it's really just the time to fry off all those veggies, which is about 10 or 15 minutes. Once you add it all in, it's probably another 15 minutes, so half an hour, and then you're at a brilliant point, and that can just sit and chill, get your pasta on, 10 minutes, boom, you're done, 40 minutes, and you've got this awesome, tasty, concentrated ragu sauce that's actually, tastes like it's been cooking for 5 hours or something. So, yeah, it's a great recipe for even doing a little dinner party, because you can prepare all this stuff beforehand, like get the brisket done, get your tomato sauce ready, and it's a super quick thing to do. So so that's going to just tick away and do its thing for a bit. In the meantime, I need to wash up that pan with the tomato sauce in it so that I can get my pasta ready, get some water on the boil. And I'm just using a spaghetti, but you could use a tagliatelle, fusilli, whatever pasta you like the look of. It doesn't really matter, whatever your preference is really. So I mean, the traditional thing for ragu like this would be quite thick kind of tagliatelle things, like it's pappardelle or whatever that is. So please don't be too critical of my Italian there. So yeah, let's give that another 10 minutes or so just to really gently bubble away, and we'll get some water on the boil for the pasta in the meantime, and we'll be back in about 10 minutes. Right, we're back. So this has had about 10 minutes doing its thing, just really gently bubbling away. Now I've had in my little glass of water here and added a little bit more as we've been going. I'm just cooking this enough so that the pumpkin chunks are cooked. So if you're not sure if it's ready, just keep going in and just have a little check of the pumpkin and see if it's kind of, it should just, if you push against one, just sort of mush against the side of the thing and fall apart a bit, which is about right. So I think this is pretty good. It can go a little bit longer. So now we're going to get our pasta on, and this I'm going to just add a little smash more water in there just to sort of keep things loose in there. And there's so much flavour in here that a little bit of water isn't actually going to hurt too much. So as you can see, it's just super, all the beef's just shredded down, some of the pumpkin's just smushed into it, and we have got to find that clove of garlic somehow. That might have been it there, but fuck knows where that is. So you know, we'll see if I can find it in a bit. So that can just do its thing and just keep cooking off. We're going to get our pasta on, which is going to be 10 to 12 minutes. Just a nice big saucepan full of water, which you salt. You want about 2 teaspoons of salt in there, I guess. I've got about this much pasta, which is about 1 inch diameter, just enough for me. If you go about that per person, that's about right. It's 100 grams per person essentially. So I'm going to pop this in the water now, which is boiling and salted. And once it's in, let it, I mean, if you're doing spaghetti, let it kind of droop in so it's all sinks into the water. Give it a minute or so and give it a stir so it doesn't stick together. And then just let that come to the boil and then turn it down to a real gentle simmer. And cook that as per the instructions on the pack. So this is about 10 minutes. So we're going to cook this for 10 more minutes. And then we'll be ready to serve. Right, we're back. So pumpkin is tasting good. I just got a little chunk out and gave it a try. It's about perfect. It's got some of the bigger bits have a nice kind of textury chunkiness to them, but they're not. They're obviously they're cooked, which is great. So I know that's good. So that's just been bubbling away like that. I think there's enough liquid there. I'm actually going to turn it off now. And then we're going to do our last little thing while our pasta cooks, and this can just rest for a bit. So my pasta's in, and I'm just keeping an eye on this and just stirring it every so often just to make sure it doesn't stick together. I could probably bring that out and show you, but I mean, it is just pasta, so you should know what you're doing with that. Just follow the instructions on the pan, but if you just keep tossing it around in the pan, it just won't stick together. And once it's got to a certain point, you can just kind of leave it and do its thing. So that's going to be about 10 minutes. So now we want to just finish this pasta up, this sauce off. I've turned the heat off, left the lid on. So what we're going to do now is just do this. I love doing this in tomato sauces. It's such a tasty little thing to do. So we're going to take a small handful of freshly grated Parmesan, and this is the really good stuff, the Reggiano stuff, which is aged 24 months. So I'm just going to sprinkle that through. That's probably about enough. We're going to pop in a few little knobs of butter. So 4 little knobs of butter, and just let that do that. And then we're also going to pop in some nice fresh basil. So I'm just going to tear off some basil. That's probably about good, just like that. And that's just been washed, and then you just shake it and dry it, and there you go. So let's get a knife out, one of my many knives. This butter is for the pasta, which we're going to do in a minute. I can just put that to one side. So with the basil, we're just going to clump it all up together. You can tear it, but because it's going in the sauce, we just do a cut and just really gentle just cuts like this, just in a slicing motion. Watch your fingers when you're doing herbs, because this is actually probably the highest risk that you're going to cut yourself, because you've got to like keep adjusting your grip as you're chopping it like this. So do this well, nice and slowly, and just keep sort of clumping it up, and just do one cut through like that. And that's, I mean, that's pretty good really, just like that's fine. And we're just going to sprinkle that through as well. Obviously if you're doing this and it's all veggie and you're a vegan, don't do the butter and the cheese part. You can just drizzle some olive oil and basil through it and do the same process. And that's just going to sit there and just rest. Heats off, lids on, and just leave that to one side, or just like this, and that can just do its thing. The butter is going to melt and the cheese is going to goo, and then we're going to stir that all together right at the end. And that's a really good tip for like tomato sauces, and that works with a bolognese, which I'll do on here at some point. And it works really well. Well, most tomato-based Italian sauces this works really well with. So that's cool. So that's going to chill out for until the pasta's cooked, and that can just sit there not indefinitely, but while the pasta's cooking and doing its thing, you don't have to worry about that. It's not going to overcook and stick or anything because it's just turned off. The residual heat's going to melt the butter and the cheese and stuff before we stir that through. Once the pasta's cooked, I'll show you what we're going to do with that, and then we'll just serve it up. So we'll be right back and do that stage next. Right, we're back. So I've just moved the pasta over here so you can see what I'm doing. This is just still resting. I haven't stirred that through yet. I'll let you kind of see me do that. So now with the pasta, this is looking pretty good. I know this is kind of done, but if you're unsure, just pull out one of the bits of pasta, cut a bit off, and just give it a try. It should have a nice little bite to it, but not too soft or hard either way. That's about right. I know that's pretty good. It's going to keep cooking with a bit of residual heat. So what I want to do, and this is really important, get a mug, just save some liquid, put that to one side, because we're going to use that to stir this through, just to loosen things up a bit if we need to. That's all good. Turn that off, and we're going to strain that through a little colander. I'll do that here. You don't really need to see me do that. That'll toss around. Get rid of the excess water. You just have to trust me that I'm doing that. And then I'm just going to pop that back in the pan like this, okay? So now what we're going to do is a couple of knobs of butter. You can't go wrong. And I'm going to do, it's salty enough, so you don't need salt at this stage, because I salted the water, and this butter is salted as well. Bit of pepper. I love butter and pepper through pasta. It's like a real nostalgic flavour for me. I just think it's awesome. So that's how I love to serve these things. If it needs a bit more loosening up, you can add a little swizzle of olive oil in that if you want to, which I've got a little bit in here still, just a little, literally a drizzle. You don't need to do much at all. And that is perfect. That can just sit there. So that's just really nicely tossed in butter and black pepper. That is just absolutely perfect. Get that off the bloody fork if it will come off. Lid on. That can just chill out for a sec. Now let's come back to this. Take that lid off. And then as you can see, this is smelling beautiful with the basil, the cheese and the butter. It's all just melted. So we're just going to now just toss that through really nice and gently. So can you see? You should be able to see pretty nicely. And we're just going to stir that really gently. If it's too thick, because the butter and the cheese is going to thicken it a touch, this pasta water that we reserved, just a little drizzle of that through, just to help loosen it off a bit. And that is, the basil just gives it a really nice sort of fragrance to it, an extra little fresh kind of flavour kick. A little bit more of that. I think that's pretty good. There we go. Now what you could do is take a bit of this, put it into this pasta and toss that together so it coats all the pasta. It's quite a traditional thing to do, and then just put more on top. But I quite like, or maybe I will do that. I quite like sometimes just leaving the pasta like that, putting it in the bowl and then just putting this on top and then mixing it through myself. It's entirely up to you what you want to do. I think for this, because the photo might shoot a bit better, I'll leave it just like this with a bit of this on top. We'll see how that works. And then once you get your your bowl and you just toss it all together yourself at the table, and then off you go, smash it. Yeah, that's great. I think that's good. Maybe a little smash more of that. And that's all got that beautiful butter and cheesiness all through it, and the Parmesan cheese is just packed full of like this umami flavour, so that just gives it this kind of unctuous beautifulness. So there we go, that's awesome. So now we're going to plate it up. So get whatever you want to serve it in. I need more space. It's always the quest for more space. I might have to go to IKEA and get myself an extra little kitchen island. So there's our bowl. Beautiful. We're going to get some tongs. It's probably the easiest thing to do here, and then just grab a bit of that into the bowl, kind of, I don't know, twist it around for a bit of height. Now then, if you're like me, you're going to put far too much in here, but I'm going to try not to, just so it looks good for the picture. There's that, awesome. And then let's just get a bit of this, and we're just going to put it in the middle and pile it on top. Just get a nice mixture, so we've got a bit of pumpkin and a bit of carrot and everything. And if you haven't found that rogue bit of garlic, don't worry about it. But if you have a hunt through, you might see it, you might not. So, like I said, it's not the end of the world, because it's all going to be sweet and delicious. So, it's no bad thing really. But if someone gets it at the dinner table, you just give them a prize. Maybe their partner won't want to kiss them, but whatever. There we go. So that's looking pretty damn awesome. Give this a little drizzle of olive oil and a final little sprinkle of Parmesan just in and around everything. Just a little bit on top. You can always have more at the table. So there we go. That is my beautiful ragu sauce. Hopefully it focuses if I hold it still enough. So beautiful pasta, lovely beef brisket ragu with our nice little homemade tomato sauce. Absolutely delicious. Once you get it to the table, toss it all through, mix it all up together, add some more sauce on if you want to, if you're greedy guts like me, and that is it. I mean, like I said, pretty simple recipe. If you've got the brisket done and the sauce done and pre-prepared at the weekend, this is all just stuff that you can just chuck together and create into these awesome little recipes that don't take that long, but give you these really amazing end results. I mean, this will wow anyone, this thing. So super tasty, lots of depth of flavor, kind of quick to do really. I mean, this is probably 40 minutes, you know, start to finish. As long as you've got the brisket and everything done, otherwise it's like 12 hours, but you know, whatever. What are you going to do? So yeah, there we go. Cheers for tuning in, everyone. Hit me up on Instagram at Timmy_foodie. If you give this a go, tag me in #TimmyFoodie, and I'll I'd love to hear your feedback. Drop me a comment on the channel, hit me up with a subscribe, a share, a like, whatever you can do would be really greatly appreciated. We'll be back with another recipe soon. I think I'm going to turn some of this brisket into beautiful brisket sliders. I might even use some of this mixture here, because I think that could be quite nice, almost like Italian meatball sub vibe, but with a brisket mix like this. I think that could be quite cool. So there we go, there's that, and we'll be back soon. Cheers, guys.